Hi everyone, this is Dave Sook from UCURP. Thanks for joining us on our webinar and discussion about dealing with uncertainty and how to conquer it. So as people are coming online, I would ask you to download the UCURP app because that has exclusive content just for this webinar and extra resources and templates that you can use after we're all done here. So as people are getting settled in, I'm going to ask you to type in the chat box, what are your expectations for this hour? What would make this valuable for you? So as you get settled in, please type those in. I see Candace is here. Welcome, Candace. And she says, safe travel, how to travel safely in these uncertain times. Okay, that's great. I see Leah, who wants to help others within her organization, how she can do that. Okay, great, we'll deal with that. Peter is here, and George, hi, George, and Pamela, great, great. And we will have one person joining us, so a little bit later, so we'll catch her up when she joins. So some of the other comments were about how to manage career uncertainty, how to deal with the resolution to our current pandemic. So all of those things I will try to work into our discussion as we go through the material here. Okay, so let's get started. So those are kind of the 5 things that I want to go through, and I think we'll touch on all of the things that you have said were important to you. Okay, your turn again. So when someone says things are uncertain, travel is uncertain, my career is uncertain, life is uncertain, what do you mean by that? How do you define what uncertainty is? Again, type it in the chat box or feel free to just shout it out. Safety of travel, not knowing exactly what the career path is, right? So it's that the unknown. There's that personal safety aspect. There's no resolution. There doesn't seem to be any solution to the crises that we're dealing with, and how to prepare for what's next. Okay, all right, those are good. Those are very good, good ideas around all of that. So good old Merriam-Webster has several ways of describing uncertainty, and mostly it's describing what it's not. It's not knowing something beyond doubt. So that we know that beyond a shadow of a doubt, the sun will rise tomorrow, for example. Not having sufficient knowledge of something. So we may know about it, but maybe not the knowledge that we want. Something that's not clear or clearly defined, or something that's not constant. It's changing all the time. Uncertainty is also about change. And then lastly, what's things that are not reliable, so that we count on things being a certain way, but now all of a sudden they're not that way. So that's what Merriam-Webster defines it as. We've defined it as that personal safety, that resolution, how to prepare, that lack of control. We all have our own definition, but they all kind of swirl around this theme of having control, having knowledge, and having that stability. So what kinds of things, we've mentioned about some of the things that are uncertain in your life right now, but let's talk about in broader terms, in the world in which we live, what are the kinds of things or the categories of things that you feel are uncertain or are the most uncertain in your life right now? Type or shout. Economic uncertainty, yes, for sure. Health uncertainty, yes, definitely. Good old COVID pandemic. We don't know whether we're in a recession or not. resolution to the COVID crisis. Yep. Around the health. Yep. Yes. The whole personal and business life of what of what's going on in those both of those areas. Yes. Very good. Very good. So there's some themes, common themes that you've identified, and again, what the new normal will look like. Perfect. So certainly COVID has caused uncertainty around, am I getting this thing? If I get it, how do I avoid it? How do I, make sure that my loved ones stay safe? There's political uncertainty for sure in many, many countries around the world. There's, our cousins to the south that are in the middle of an election campaign with a minority government in Canada. That's very uncertain because there can be a vote of non-confidence at any time. There's lots of upheaval between Azerbaijan and Armenia, so there's lots of political uncertainty. There's economic uncertainty, definitely. We got GDP numbers out just today for July that showed things were actually ticking along quite nicely. But if you listen to any of those broadcasts, it actually was tempered from the Bank of Canada saying that, in fact, we know that post July, the recovery has stopped for sure. So that economic uncertainty in Canada is certainly happening. Then there's the whole idea around career and job changes. People are working from remotely now, and that whole idea of what's that doing to our mental health. And humans are social beings, so we need to be with other people, and just staring at a screen is not being with other people the way we need to. I heard a piece on the radio today about a blind person that was talking about her adaptations to dealing with COVID. And her biggest issue is when she goes out to a place of business, to the mall or a restaurant, that the normal thing for her to do is for her to ask one of the servers at a restaurant to take her arm and lead her to a table. Well, that can't happen anymore. So that whole idea of how we're dealing with each other in relationships, either with our significant others or at work or just in everyday life, is definitely all thrown into the wind now. So I hope you've got a good, through the answers that you've put up here and through the discussions that we've had through the chat box, that idea of, what does uncertainty mean to all of us and what those different themes are. So great, we've defined it, but why is it important that we conquer this thing called uncertainty? What makes it so relevant now? Well, being able to deal with, thrive in, or conquer, whatever verb you want to use with uncertainty, it's a good life skill to have because, one, it helps us deal with stress. So being able to conquer this thing called uncertainty just reduces the amount of stress in our life. Next, having that idea of taking control of what we can through uncertainty is very important. It provides us with some foundation for us to deal with those things that we can't control. And then this idea of having tools is important. It's an important answer to the question why, because this isn't going to change. People talk about the new normal. Once we get through the COVID pandemic, there will be other uncertainty that the world is going to have to deal with, or we in our individual lives are going to have to deal with. So having some tactics, tools, and strategies to deal with uncertainty on an ongoing basis is important because you're going to need them. And then finally, dealing with all of that allows us to help others. So having those tools and strategies on how to conquer uncertainty allows us to help others within our organizations, within our lives, to deal with the uncertainty as well. So let's move on to this idea of, you've all identified very different kinds of uncertainty and the things that you want to get out of this discussion. One of the key things is that everybody reacts differently in these shifting times or changing times. And I want to talk a little bit about how we talk about how different people react to change. So one of the things at U-Curve that we use in helping people achieve their goals or make changes that stick in their lives is this idea that everybody has a personal style or personal preferences. And that was developed, way back in the beginning of the last century, beginning of the 20th century, by a person by the name of Carl Jung. And what he did was he looked at, through his research, he looked at a very simple but a very effective model of how we can talk about people's behavioral preferences or personal styles. And so what he did was he divided things up into people's reactions and their motivations and fears along two axes. And the first one is around between thinking and feeling. So this idea that people are internally focused, they think through a problem on their own versus they go with their own, feelings and gut reactions and intuition. They're expressive versus, so that whole introvert extrovert, if you want to use those terms. The other axis is around how we deal with situations, which was the facts and in a very logical sense, or do we deal with them through interacting with other people? So are you somebody that uses that cliche phrase from Dragnet, give us just the facts, please, and we'll deal with this in a very orderly, very factual manner, versus making sure that the dynamic of solving the problem, the people involved, and is everybody on board, and are we all swimming in the same direction? Is that more of a preference? So this idea of dividing up these two axes, what we did at U-Curve is we looked at a lot of the tools that are out there that are being used and boiled it down to a simple metaphor that we can use, again, to have a language to talk about it. So what we did was we looked at the 4 quadrants of a circle and assigned a color to each quadrant that then gives us a description of each quadrant in a color. So for example, a green personal preference would be someone that is quite cautious, someone that likes predictability. Can be very tenacious. These are the thinkers. I call them the ever-ready bunnies. They're very, very dedicated to a cause, a team, a relationship, and they just keep persisting. The yellow folks, those are the expressive people, the people. They like to be around others. They like to think outside the box. They are the creative, curious ones, and they need to talk and interact with others. These are the folks that when they come into the room, they light up the whole room. The red people, these are the independent, fast-paced. They like to be in control. They like to have their own destiny in their own hands, and they are definitely people that like to go fast. They like to make sure that everything is happening quickly and it's goal-oriented and it's happening the way they want. Lastly are the blue people. These are the procedure folks. These are the folks that are logical. They tend to be fairly low risk and very conservative. They're very systematic. They do step 1 before step 2, before step 3. They tend to be very value technical expertise, whether it's as a painter or a proctologist or a dentist or a data analyst, but they are the people that really focus on the technical aspect of things. So those are just brief discussions of what we mean by the 4 different colors or 4 different personal styles. Now, I want to preface this by saying that human beings are very complex beasts, and we are a mix of all of these colors to varying degrees, and those of us can tend to dial up or dial down different preferences depending on situations. However, 2 things. One is, under circumstances of great change or great uncertainty, people tend to gravitate towards a home base or gravitate towards what they know. So we like to say that as much as we are all adaptable and certainly do have mixes of these different attributes to varying degrees, we all have a home base. And what we try to do is to say, look, when we're talking about uncertainty, let's focus on that home base as a personal style or personal preference, because that's what you're going to go to. Okay, that's a lot of information at you. I'm going to stop for a second here, and I'm going to ask you to unmute. And are there any questions or concerns or other comments about what I'm talking about in terms of these personal styles around uncertainty? So please shout it out, ask questions, make comments.
Hi, Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, I like how you laid this out, and I do agree. Though it's a continuum. We're not just one or the other, but yeah, we do tend to be more like one of these quadrants as opposed to another. But at the same time, I agree that it is more complicated than that, and sometimes we can do things differently for certain different situations.
That's right, and actually that's a good point, Peter, because a lot of the coaching that I've done with people is knowing what your personal style home base is not an excuse to behave a certain way. And your ability to thrive with uncertainty and change is your ability to dial up or dial down other parts of this circle so that you can deal with different situations. Yeah, good comment. Anybody else?
Dave, do you think it's possible to, well, I suppose it is possible, but have you ever taken, say, the 16 personalities in the Myers-Briggs test and see how that would fit into these 4 quadrants?
Actually, it maps directly, Pamela. We did, when we were developing the whole U-curve methodology and the tools, I developed it with a colleague of mine, and he was certified in Myers-Briggs. And when you research the foundation of Myers-Briggs, it actually goes back to the Carl Jung Foundation. So a lot of these tools that you hear about are, when you trace them back to their origins, they all come from the same spot, which is that work that Carl Jung has done. Now, different tools have developed different metaphors and have developed different aspects of it, but they all come back to that root. And actually, we do have a way of mapping the 16 Myers-Briggs and the 4 DISC personalities and the 4 predictive index and insights, and all of them can be mapped back to this, what I call, this is kind of a generic version of all of them. Yes.
That's interesting. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Make sense? Sort of, kind of? So here's an unfair task for you. Having heard me describe what these 4 colors look like, and you've got you've got 3 different bullet points for each of them. If you were to look at those, knowing what you know about yourself, what color do you think your home base would be? Just as a first guess. Okay, so here's a good example. The red person wants to be first. She had to answer first. Well done, Pamela. Okay, Leah, yellow. Yellow with an exclamation mark. Okay, so that's a bright yellow. Okay, very good. Candace, green. Peter, yellow. Okay, very good. Yep. Anne and George, any comments? Oh, George, blue. Okay, very good. Yep. Okay, that's great. Okay, good, good. So that great. So right away, this is the really great thing about this way of talking about it is people can see themselves almost immediately once you describe it to them. So you don't have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a Carl Jung fanatic or whatever. You can very easily get a first reaction, and you know what? Even if it's not 100% correct, you know yourself, so you're probably going to be 80%, 75% correct anyway. So it gives people an easy way to develop some self-awareness about who they are. Now, what I'm going to do is just show you the, there's more tools around in more detail about assessing what your different colors are and what your color is, your home base is. So I'm going to show that to you on my phone on the app. There we go. So when everyone can see that screen, my phone screen, okay? If you can't shout out or say something. Oh, Peter has a question. It says, is there a discrepancy between your own self-perception and what others feel you are? Yes, very much. So in many of the tools that are out there, they measure both your perception and others' perception of what you are. So sometimes how you come across and what you really are can be two different things. And that can be for a variety of reasons, one of which could be just your own level of self-awareness. So if you don't have a high level of self-awareness about who you are, this can get skewed a little bit. So yes, so a great way to validate this is, for example, when we're finished here, go back to your significant other, give them a little bit of a description of all of this stuff, and ask them what they think, and that might be an interesting conversation. So, a great question, Peter, thank you. So I'm going to just open up the UCurve app, and I'm going to show you the tools that are available through content that was made available to you as being part of this webinar. So when you download the app, if you go in, some of you have done this already, but for those of you that haven't, you go up to the menu bar, and then you can register yourself. And I'm just going to create a quick fictitious name, Ursula Uncertainty. So when you go in and then register, then there's a member content screen that comes up, but I'm going to go back to the home screen, and you can see that there on the home screen there are two buttons. One is around topics, which is topics of content that I'll show you, but more importantly to the right of that is the Track Now button. And when you go in and select that, I sent this all out to you, and if I haven't, please let me know in the chat box and I will send it out again. If you enter the unlock code, which is 81232, so 800020, that will unlock content specifically for this webinar. So you can see when you go to the topics directory there, the second one down there is there's a subcategory called the Uncertainty Webinar. And there's all kinds of videos and journals and questions and galleries and stuff that you can access after this webinar is finished. The reason I'm showing you all this is if you go to the section that's called Journals, there is the second one down there is about what's my personal style. So when you select that, that's just a little questionnaire on helping you determine what your personal style is. And you can see question 1 there, there's a list of adjectives, and it asks you to list the ones that are, quote, dead on for you. And then another question that asks which ones you're definitely not. And then you can, there's a podcast that you can listen to give you more description. But then you can look at the wheel there that's got more information and more accurately determine what is your home base or your color. So I encourage you to use that, and then you can get more insights. So hopefully you'll take advantage of that, because that's there. It's free. There's no charge. You just have to download the app and register, and you'll have access to that. Questions, comments about using the app to help you determine your color? Fairly straightforward. Okay, good. Thanks. Okay, Leah says looks great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again with some of this. So we've talked about, define what uncertainty is. We've talked about how what those things are that are most important to you, that are uncertain, that you're dealing with, and what type of color attributes you might be. So here's a question for the group. And again, you can shout this out or you can write it in the chat box, which is, given what you know about each of those colors now, which is only a very introductory level, I get that, but what kinds of reactions do you think a green person would have? How would they react to uncertainty, given what you know about a green person? So I assume the green person will have a good insight into that, Candace, but I'm interested also to hear what the other participants might think. How would a green person react, for those that are non-green? Shout it out or write it in.
I would think someone who's green would be almost in marketing what we refer to as laggards. I think they would want to wait and see what everyone else is doing, and follow after. That's just my
that's very
perception.
good. Yes, green people tend to like that, because they like that predictability. In uncertainty, they would not be the first ones to say, okay, well, that's fine, let's just jump in because that's just the thing to do. No, that is not them at all. That is not them at all. That's right. Very good. Okay, any other thoughts around how a green person would act to uncertainty? Yes, Candace says slowly. That's right, because they are that tenacious, ever-ready bunny. That's how they would react, for sure, for sure. Oops, hang on one sec. Let me just go back here. Okay, actually, we have another participant that's going to be joining us, and I'll just let her in. Jessica is going to be joining us in a second. Yes, cautiously. That's right. That's right. Yeah, very good. Welcome, Jessica. You kind of caught us about halfway through. We're just talking about different personal styles and different colors.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. I'm glad you were able to make it. Glad you're able to make it.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to put you on the spot a little bit. You know a little bit from previous discussions we've had about different colors. When you look at the slide that's up there and the different colors of personal styles, first gut reaction, what color would you say you are as your personal style?
Probably green.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There's a little bit of a but there.
I think I'm also a bit of a yellow.
Okay. Okay.
But I think I'm a bit cautious. So I
right. You're what you're saying is that your home base is probably green, especially in times of stress or uncertainty.
Yeah, especially during this time.
Yes, exactly. That's why we're doing the webinar. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we're talking about reactions of the different styles to uncertainty. So let's move to yellow. So those people, the expressive, curious, anybody can either write in the chat box or you can shout it out. How do you think a yellow person reacts to uncertainty? Those people.
I'm going to just say it rather than type it, Dave. And I would say, you know, the yellow people will want to reach out to friends, colleagues, and for support from a group, and and just kind of find out where everybody is going with this change. So they will want to gravitate towards friends and colleagues to talk about it out loud together.
That's right. They want to verbalize what they're feeling and what it's all about. Yeah, that's nail on the head. Well done. Well done. Okay, what about the red people? Those fast-paced, independent, like to be in control folks. How will they react? And we'll let the non-red people talk first. Any thoughts? Either typed or spoken?
They get bossy.
Yes, they can kind of push back, right? They want to push back on and take control of anything they can when there isn't a lot of control or certainty in their lives. That would be a very typical reaction. Yes. Yeah, very good. Okay, lastly, the blue, logical, systematic, low risk folks. What are they? How would they react?
Well, I think, can you hear me, Dave?
Yes, George. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think a logical person would look at the probability of risk in their actions. So if you look at the whole of Ontario, you realize there's only 400 people that have tested positive. You can, you take, you manage your risk and you decide what is okay to do and what is not okay. You just don't go into a shell. You manage the risk and you still end up doing a lot of the things you were doing with the proper precautions in place.
So spoken like a true blue person. That's right. It's that let's do an analysis. Let's do a cost benefit risk analysis. Look at the numbers, look at the probabilities, and then make a decision based on that, and change our behaviors based on the facts and what the procedures are. Yes. Yeah, very good. Very good. So that's how people would react. So next, this idea that, okay, given that each of these colors has strengths that they can bring to the table in dealing with uncertainty, what would they bring to the table to help them personally deal with the changing, shifting sands around them? Start with green again. What can a green person draw upon to help them deal with uncertainty? And I'll turn to the green people.
I think for me, something that helps with uncertainty is developing a really solid routine. So a daily routine that gives me a little bit of predictability that I crave, even if it's, you know, what I'm eating or my activities, just to give me a little bit of foundation. That's something that really helps with uncertain times.
Perfect. That's dead on. Yes, that that predictability. Draw on that predictability and put some predictability wherever you can. Yep. Well done. Okay, yellow person. What does a yellow person bring to the table? Leah?
I think when there comes to uncertainty, I'm always like looking for new possible solutions and trying to figure out like what we can solve. I like to get people together to kind of brainstorm on different ways that we can approach something in a kind of new way.
That's right. It's that draw upon that creativity, that thinking out of the box about what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? There's got to be something we can do. Let's think differently. Yeah, very much. Very much. Pamela, a red person, what do you bring to the table to help you deal with uncertainty?
try and put together a plan. Look at what resources we do have, what is available and working. Success leaves clues. So to look at, without having to reinvent the wheel, and that may be where things become fast-paced, to see what already exists that we can leverage. So really trying to work smart, not hard, in the sense of how can we use what we have to move forward. And I just find it, I think it's because other people possibly recognize that in the red people, if you will. And then it seems like other people tend to look to them, look to the red group for that leadership. And they're looking to them. And I think there ends up feeling a sense of responsibility to how can we, how can we help others in the process? And maybe in that, we don't end up actually taking care of ourselves because we feel an obligation.
You touched on a couple of great points there. So that assessment, that quick assessment, let's see what we've got at what's here at our hand, within our control. How do we get things back to normal or get things certain as fast as possible? First in, typically, early adopter in anything. So those are the kinds of things that you can draw upon, which is that let's do a quick assessment and get things going quickly. Yeah, very good. And lastly, George, what are those things that you can draw upon to help you deal with uncertainty? You described a little bit, but any other thoughts?
Sorry, Dave, repeat that for me. I missed that.
I said, what attributes or strengths as a blue person can you draw upon to help you deal with all of any uncertain situations?
You just come up with a plan. You take a logical course of action, and without taking unnecessary risks, but managing the risks according to the risk-reward ratio.
There you go. It's that analysis, right? It's drawing upon that. Let's look at the cold, hard facts of the situation to make the right decision, right? That's a very good attribute to draw upon to help with uncertainty. Yes, very good. Good. Well, this is a star group. Obviously, you've got it all figured out. Didn't need me. We just needed to talk to each other. So there's a person by the name of Natalie Kogan, and she runs a website called happier.com. And when I was putting together information around this idea of certainty, I really liked what she proposed and some of the tactics and strategies, because they were all based on psychology and research. So again, George, this will appeal to you because it's all based on research and science. So there are 5 key things that she talks about for helping to embrace change, and talks about increasing your uncertainty tolerance. And the first is just embracing it. So there's this idea of accepting it. So uncertainty is part of our lives. We all know this. But for some people, the planners and the fixers, that idea that things are uncertain doesn't come easily. So this idea of consciously pushing yourself to accept the fact that it's just not going to be normal for a while. It's just going to be in flux for a while. And to think about what that does to you from a feeling standpoint, how that makes you feel, stressed, fearful, worried, whatever it might be, and just acknowledging those feelings and giving yourself that permission to say it's okay to feel that way. Like you don't have to be the strong, silent person in the room. It's okay to have all those feelings and to talk about that or to express that in some way. The next is around that balancing. She calls it zoom in on what's good, and it's that idea of looking at what we do have that's certain in our lives and being grateful and showing gratitude for those things that we know are true. I know when I wake up in the morning that my significant other is going to be there for me. I'm grateful for that person. I know that I can go forth and take control of my own mental well-being and fitness by having an exercise plan, whatever it is. So, but just being grateful and searching those things out, because the research shows that like just starting to think about something that you're grateful for releases serotonin, which actually gives you a mood boost, and dopamine, and that encourages your brain to keep looking for things to appreciate. So you start this kind of this feedback loop, chemical feedback loop in your brain. So consciously looking for things to be grateful for, it actually, from a neuroscience perspective, actually works. The next is around spreading kindness and intentional kindness. So reaching out to someone to help them deal with uncertainty or stress actually makes it easier for us, because you're paying it forward. You're making sure that someone else is dealing with the uncertainty, and it just has those tiny positive interactions with others. It makes sure it makes us happier, but there's a whole bunch of brain chemistry around oxytocin and all of those things around kindness that happen when you all of those things that happen at a neurological level when you actually help somebody else. The next is around that eyes on the prize. So this idea of taking a breath, taking a pause, stepping back, and thinking about, like, what are we doing here? Why am I doing what I'm doing in life? What is it that gives my life the most meaning and the most purpose? And just re-examining that, and talking about it with somebody else or writing it down for yourself really helps you gain perspective and deal with this idea of resiliency to uncertainty. So just taking that pause to put your eyes on the prize around the meaningfulness in your life can actually help you. I threw in a sixth bullet in here, which is know yourself, which is around the idea that knowing who you are, what your fears, motivations, and preferences are, i.e. what color you are, personal style you are, actually helps you deal with and approach all of these tactics in a way that's best for you. So, for example, a blue person might want to make a written list of all of the people that they're going to do a kindness for and check them off the list. Whereas a yellow person would just go out and start reaching out to people right off the bat. So it's just different approaches, but what's going to work better for you. So the last one is around going to your anchors or self-care. And Jessica mentioned this, and it's very good, even though she said as a green person, this is something that helps her. It actually helps everybody, regardless of your personal style, which is establishing a routine or something that you can control or make something certain in your own life, even if it's very small. And again, Jessica, you mentioned this idea of just that routine is I'm going to make sure that I have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that they're relatively at the same time every day, because that routine helps provide an anchor or a foundation to deal with all the chaos. I know that when 6 o'clock comes, the world will stop and I will have my evening meal. So dealing with those anchors and establishing those anchors on a daily basis is important. It provides that foundation for you, and it helps you get centered again. I'm going to pause. Questions, comments, reactions to these approaches to conquering uncertainty?
Oh, Dave, I just wanted to make a comment about the previous personality types. I don't know if that's what you want to call it, but
style, yeah.
But I think it's also important to realize that there's value in all of them. I certainly wouldn't want to be on a team with a bunch of other yellow people, because we'll all be happy, but we might not get anything done. Whereas we would need somebody blue to organize things, and then somebody red to crack the whip a little bit to keep us task focused. I just think there's no bad personality type.
No. Yes, that's a very good point. That's right. One is no better or worse, or more capable or less capable of dealing with uncertainty. That's for sure. No, that's a very good point to make. Yes, it's not good, bad, or otherwise. It just is. Yeah.
It's funny. I was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking of people on my team and how grateful I am that they bring those pieces too, that I can rely on them to do the research, and then it also helps me manage my expectation of the team, because I know some people are going to take longer to do it, and that's totally cool, and that's great, because I can then allot that amount of time to a project to them for that. Right. And it's the orchestra. We're not all playing the same instrument. We have to have the beauty of all the different tones and pitches, I think, in the end to achieve that. And ultimately it can rub off on each other. There's aspects of all those other personalities that I really admire, and I would like to be more like, and so I can look at them and I can learn from them as well. And I encourage everyone to do the same.
Yeah, that's right. The strength and diversity, for sure. Any other comments around these suggestions for how to go forth and conquer uncertainty? All good?
I love the gratitude idea. I think it's just such a great way to quickly reframe stuff.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Because I mean, aside from all the the biochemical stuff I talked about, it just resets your attitude consciously.
Yes. Sam Harris has a podcast, and he talks about that as well.
Oh, very good. Very good.
So that's one way to just just be grateful, and then you realize, oh my gosh, things aren't so bad,
Yeah.
So
very good. Actually, Peter, I'm going to follow up with you on that in a second here. So I want to respect our time here. We've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to just press on here. So here's what I'm proposing, gang, is that if we've got we've already talked about your personal styles and knowing yourself better. If we looked at the 5 different tactics of conquering uncertainty, creating and committing to doing each one of those is going to be different for each of you depending on your color and your preference. So making that uncertainty plan for you is going to be dependent on your color. And what I want to quickly show you is, I'm going to go back to sharing the UCurve app screen and show you that there's resources there to help you. And let me just stop sharing. Okay. Go. So you should be seeing my screen now. There we go. So if we open up the UCurve app, under the uncertainty webinar, there's a section called journals. And what I've done is I've loaded in a questionnaire self-reflection journal for each of the 4 colors around those different conquering uncertainty tactics. So for example, under the green one, each of them has 5 questions, one around each of those tactics, and you can type in and put together your own plan, and there's suggestions around that of what you want to do personally, whatever it might be. So then you can save that, and you can have that on your phone at your fingertips, and as you execute that plan and go through each of those, you can track your progress. So it's a way of one, solidifying what you're going to do, and two, it helps you hold yourself accountable because you can always go back to that plan and see how well you're doing with it. So there is a journal or a plan template, if you like, for each of the 4 colors with each of those 5 different tactics. So that tool is there and available for you on the UCurve app that will help you put together something constructive and real coming out of this session.
So Dave, is this, maybe it's just on mine, I'm not seeing this yet. Will that appear then after the webinar?
That will appear when you enter in the unlock code, and I can email you that unlock code. So when you
sure, okay, no worries. Yeah, I won't hold up on a technical now. I thought I had, but obviously not.
Right.
So is this something that, so this is great to see how this can supplement the webinar.
Yes.
And I guess you would continue to build these for different webinars?
Yes, so the UCurve app, as most of you know, has just recently launched, and as part of doing that, we're going to be offering different webinars on topics that are of interest to everybody, and dealing with whether it's communication or achieving a goal like getting fit or running a marathon or just eating more healthy. All of those kinds of things are going to be there as resources for you on the UCurve app with tools just like what you're seeing here now. So more to come, more to come. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing. Any other questions about that? Okay, good. I'm going to just finish up quickly here because we are just about out of time. So I encourage you to use the app. Panel, to build on your point, the other kinds of resources that are going to be made available very soon are going to be around helping you deal with financial uncertainty, helping you with goal setting, helping you with better nutrition so that you are taking control of something within your life, which is eating better, fitness, and just dealing with stress and mindfulness and those aspects that we talked about. There are some resources there already in the topics area under the uncertainty webinar, podcasts and videos and even other websites, etc. And there's another YouTube video there from another person. So look for those. There'll be notifications that go out once more of those resources are added so that you can check back and use those to help you get through some of these other aspects and just helping you deal with the uncertainty of what's going on. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of thinking that given what you folks have talked about in terms of coping skills and travel and dealing with career change and helping others, I mean, those are all great suggestions that we could put together webinars around, as well as stress and nutrition and fitness and financial and just goal setting in general. So those will be coming. You'll get notifications of when other webinars are coming up and other resources are going to be just being added to the already to the topic area. So I'm just going to throw that out there. So coming soon to a theater near you. So the next steps would be, as I said, if you haven't already, download the app, enter in that unlock code, and then investigate all those tools, and then start creating that conquering uncertainty plan, and start feeling better. So I'm going to stop it there. Thank you all. Great participation. Great, great discussion and comments. Any other final questions or suggestions or comments before we finish?
Well, Dave, I wish everybody good health through the pandemic, of course. But I also think it's important to keep perspective. What happened during the wars. And my friends have a very funny saying, I think it's funny, is, when we have an issue where something doesn't go right, we say it's a first world problem.
Yes.
And it's still important to consider the fact that we're all very, very lucky to be in Canada and where we are. And although there's uncertainty, there's still a strong economic base. We live in a wonderful country, and we should take some certainty in the fact that we'll be okay. That's
very good. That says a lot around gratitude. You got the gratitude thing down pat, George. Well done. Well said. Good perspective. Anybody else? Final comments, questions, concerns? Okay, very good. Thank you very much, folks. I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions that come to mind after the fact, just reach out to me. Happy to help, as you know.
Thanks,
right.
Dave.
Okay, I'm going to leave it all there and leave you there. Take care, folks, and talk soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.